the All Pops Elite Bloonarius boss event. We've done it with the Ace Paragon. We did it with the Dart Paragon. We just finished doing it with the brand new Tack Shooter Paragon. But will we be able to do it for the first time without a Paragon? Well, that's what I want to find out, so I'm going to be taking on Elite Bloonarius with the newly buffed Megalodon. For those of you that haven't seen it, this tower's damage got doubled in the most recent version, and the radius of its thrash attack was increased by more than triple. These two changes, along with a bug that increases the Megalodon's attack speed under certain conditions, mean that this tower is a really strong upgrade this version. But if we even wanted to buy the Megalodon, we would still need to make it through the first few rounds. The base Beast Handler might not seem like that powerful of a tower, but it does have 4 Pierce, so that combined with the Glue Gunner should let it take out the first few rounds with ease. On round 2 we put down Geraldo. I'm not really concerned about him getting pops, he shouldn't be able to reach the boss there. What I am concerned about though is putting down his NFT as soon as possible. On round 4 the base Beast Handler isn't able to take out all of the blue balloons, so it's time to say hello to the Micro Raptor. Since tier 5 beasts can get cross paths, we can still buy another beast as long as we keep it below tier 2. As long as the pops are on the same tower, we're in the clear. Using just the dino, we make it all the way to round 10 when we can finally buy the action figure. Now that the action figure is down, it's time to save up for some good old-fashioned banana farms. The first banana farm comes on round 15, but this round is pretty tricky, so I end up buying the fish to help out. The fish only has 1 pierce, but it attacks a lot faster than the dinosaur, so it'll be really helpful for cleanup. Going forward, our strategy is going to be to spend as little as we can on defense to maximize our spending towards farming. We'll keep this up until we get to tier 1 of the boss event. Basically every round after this point required constant micro. On round 17, the Regro Yellows kept beating me and it took me a couple of tries to take them down. But with some precise micro, I was able to take them all out. The next really annoying round was round 21. Even though I had a glue trap left over from round 19, this round still took me several tries to beat. You really need tight micro with the Micro Raptor. I guess that's why they call it that. By the way, if anyone's wondering why I'm not using my road spikes or tanking lives, it's because of how I do these kinds of challenges. When I'm doing an all pops boss event, I try to get all of the available pops onto the tower. Not just that tower being the only one getting pops, meaning that if a balloon gets popped by the road spikes or gets to the end of the track and I lose lives, that means that balloon wasn't popped by my main tower and therefore the challenge is lost. But that really just depends on how you interpret the challenge. That's how I've chosen to interpret it, so that's the rules I'm going to abide by. For this exact reason, we have to go ahead and buy the Camo Potion for our Beast Handler on round 24. Usually when you're using Geraldo, it would be more cost effective to just buy road spikes, but Camo Potion was only $150 more expensive. Round 25 ended up being the most difficult single round in this entire challenge. Even with a fresh Geraldo glue trap and the pickle buff, the fast moving Regro Yellows and Purples were a ton for our Beast Handler to take care of. This round alone took me 11 minutes to complete and more attempts than I'm willing to count. Because of how spread out the balloons are initially, it's really hard for the Microraptor to hit a lot of balloons at once. And the worst part is, when they do end up getting clumped together, the Microraptor ends up getting pierce capped, which means that it isn't able to pop all of the balloons in time. Part of the difficulty is that the fish and the dinosaur both take the same targeting priority, so if you put one on strong, the other will be on strong as well, and vice versa with first. But with good micro, determination, and a lot of attempts, we were able to make it past round 25. Whenever I do this challenge, round 27 is usually the round when my tower starts to get really heavily pierce capped, so I just decide to go ahead and buy the Adasaurus. Since lead balloons are coming next round, we'd need it anyway for lead popping power, so we might as well just buy it now. The Adasaurus does 3 damage compared to the Microraptor's 1, so we shouldn't have to worry about defending for the next little bit. One round that did give me a little trouble was round 31, with the regrow zebras in the back. But as long as I made sure that they didn't regrow and kept on top of the other balloons, round 31 was a piece of cake. The next few rounds were kind of boring, but a lot happened, so I'll give you a quick rundown. On round 33, I gave our Beast Handler a Camo Potion to deal with the camo balloons. On round 34, I purchased the Barracuda to help defend. And finally, before round 35, I sold all of my farms and the action figure to buy a Miniopolis. I did lose on round 35, so I ended up having to redo everything, but I think I got it in a better position than I did the first time. To make sure I wouldn't lose again, I just put some Geraldo glue at the front of the track when the rainbow balloons spawned. Round 36 was pretty tough, but all we needed to do was put down a creepy idol and the round went down. On round 37, Geraldo hits level 8, which means we'll finally have access to Jerry's fire, but we won't end up needing it until round 38 since Creepy Totem is still active. The Burny Fire's fast attack speed and damage over time effect should greatly increase our DPS and especially our cleanup, meaning not only will the next few rounds be pretty easy, but we won't even have to think about defense. And that'll be especially nice considering that on round 40 the boss will come. The tier 1 boss is weak enough that we'll probably be able to take it out with just the tier 4 Orca, but we might still need to give it a little bit more beast power. But before we even worry about that, we'll just invest more into our farms and just take care of the normal balloons. To prepare for later, I placed down another beast handler near the back and quickly upgrade it to the tier 1 fish and merge it with our original beast handler. This is to make sure that if we do end up needing extra beast power this tier, we'll be able to get it easily. After I upgraded all of our farms to tier 3, it's time to start upgrading our beast handler. To start, I grabbed the Great White upgrade. Even though the shark isn't targeting the normal balloons anymore, the power of the dinosaur and the Jerry's fire should be more than enough to defend the normal balloons. Plus, the thrash attack of the shark actually helps out a lot against normal balloons too. It sort of acts as like a mini road spike that sort of follows the big balloon around, so when the little balloons get to the place where Bloonarius is on the track, they get hit by it. At this point I had the Orca, but I kept losing to round 48 for some reason. Since the Jerry's fire can't pop purple balloons, the Adasaurus was the only source of purple popping power that was actually targeting the purple balloons. To help with this, I bought a tier 1 dinosaur on our other beast handler and quickly merged it with our original. That way, our dinosaur will have a little bit more power and we can reposition it to the back if we need to. Partway through round 49, Bloonarius reaches its first goal, which means it releases its first wave of grouped ceramics. And these ceramics actually overwhelmed our current defense. To help with this, I go ahead and upgrade our original glue gunner to a glue strike so that when the ceramics come, we can coat them with the glue so they'll go slower and take extra damage. It might seem like a good idea to put the beast handler on first so that the Orca targets the ceramics, but it's not always helpful. Whenever the Orca drags down a ceramic, it returns to the water, meaning it'll thrash less and therefore damage the other ceramics less. So if we can keep the Orca on the boss in a spot where the thrash attack will also hit the ceramics, it's better to do that. Now that I had a good strategy figured out, I just let the Orca do its thing and used the glue when I needed to. Eventually though, Bloonarius got to the end of the track and I hadn't done nearly enough damage to it. Even if I popped the tier 1 Bloonarius before it reached the exit, there was no way that I would be able to pop the ceramic rushes before they got to the exit. And considering there were only a few rounds left, I would probably defeat the rounds too quickly and then lose from round progression. To fix this, I restarted from round 30. This time, I made sure to have multiple beast handlers merged with the original beast handler so that we'll be able to get as much beast power as we need to take out the boss. I used the same strategy of waiting until I had all tier 3 farms to start buying upgrades on the fish, but instead of going straight to the Orca, I added some beast power to our Great White. This maxed Great White actually did solid damage against the boss, and I reached the first skull before we even bought the Orca. And even more surprisingly, it was able to handle the ceramics by itself, something the Orca couldn't even really do. A little bit later we did end up getting the Orca. It was definitely stronger than the one we had before, but it wasn't even close to maxed. So to give it some extra power, I went ahead and upgraded one of our support beast handlers to an Orca as well to get that extra beast power. And just like the shark, this Orca was able to take care of the ceramic rushes by itself, just with its thrash attack from hitting the boss. A few rounds later, it was pretty clear that this Orca was doing a lot better than the first one. So you'd think that the rest of tier 1 would go by pretty smoothly, right? Wrong. Because on round 53, disaster struck. The first time I came upon this round, a ceramic rush had made its way to the exit and I wasn't prepared to deal with it. Well, that's no problem, you say, just restart the round. But when I did, it dropped me off in the worst possible scenario. 3 pink balloons had made their way to the end of the track right before the round started. These balloons are spawned by the boss and therefore work independently from the round counter. That's why they can be at the end of the track like that. And since our beast handler is set to strong for the orca, the dinosaur at the back isn't targeting them. To solve this problem, as soon as the game loads in, I really quickly select the beast handler and then change its targeting with a hotkey. But after that, I have to deal with a ceramic rush that spawned right before round 53 started. The annoying part about this is the orca, the tower that we need to deal with the ceramics, is still latched onto the boss even if we restart rounds, so we'll need to wait for it to finish chomping on Bloonarius before we can retarget it. Eventually though, I figured out that if you really quickly retarget the beast handler, also really quickly go buy a glue from Geraldo, and then also really quickly go back to the beast handler and retarget the orca to the back, you can just barely take care of the ceramics. But then, once I repositioned the orca back to the front, another skull was reached within round 53, and I wasn't prepared for that one. So guess who has to redo everything, and then also take care of another ceramic rush at the end? It wasn't that bad though, since I already knew how to beat the first part of the round, so all I had to do was make sure I beat that second rush. The rest of the boss after this did end up going pretty smoothly, so after I took care of the last ceramic rush, the boss went down without another issue. Obviously this was pretty exciting, but I knew that Tier 2 would come in just a few rounds, so I needed to stay focused. After farming for a little bit and rearranging our support beast handlers, I was ready to take on Tier 2 Elite Bloonarius. My strategy for this tier was to save up for the Megalodon and buy it in the middle of the event. I figured that the Megalodon would be able to take out the Tier 2 by itself even without extra beast power, but we still needed to buy and merge 3 additional orcas to be able to buy the upgrade in the first place. Putting all of those costs together, that comes to around 92k for the Megalodon. All things considered, that's not a ton of money to use on a Tier 2 boss event, but it's still more than you might expect. Because of this, the Tier 2 Elite Bloonarius was sort of a boring tier. Even without a lot of beast power, our current orca can deal with all of the normal balloons, so we wouldn't have to worry about defending those. And if we did end up saving up for the Megalodon, it would be powerful enough to beat both the boss and the balloons it spawns, so this tier sort of just turned into a farming simulator. So after a bit of farming, we bought all of the additional orcas we would need and sold off a few farms to finally buy the Megalodon. Like I predicted, the Megalodon absolutely tore through the Tier 2 boss and all of the balloons it spawned. At one point I did have to move it around because its cleanup wasn't the best, but other than that there were no issues. And after Bloonarius barely made it past the first few bends, it was taken down. Since the Megalodon is the strongest tower we're going to be using offensively, there's really not much left to spend on. Of course we have to get to the max beast power, but that's not really that expensive. Of course there's other support towers that we'd need like the Overclock Engineer or the Homeland Defense Village, but I was starting to realize at this point that we really didn't need to farm that much in the later tiers. I still did keep a few farms around just in case we ended up needing something for one of the later tiers. When the Tier 3 boss event came on round 80, I figured that a max beast power Megalodon with a few Ultra Boost stacks would be able to take care of it by itself. So after grabbing all of the extra beast handlers we needed, I started the boss event. And let me say, I was very pleasantly surprised by the power of this thing. I was expecting the Megalodon to beat the boss, but I thought it would take quite a few rounds to do this. But with the overclock buffs I gave it and a Homeland Defense, it just took 2 rounds to take it out. That's 2 million HP gone before it even reached the first bend. And that's not even with max buffs. That's a really good side going forward, because we'll need to deal 40 million HP to the Tier 5 Elite Bloonarius. But before we even got there, we still had to deal with the Tier 4 boss. I knew that this shark would be strong enough to take out Tier 4, since it only has about 4 times the HP of the Tier 3, and we had more overclock stacks this time. The main thing we had to worry about was just not letting other towers steal pops. This tier went well, but it did show me that there were a few spots where the shark's thrash attack wouldn't hit certain balloons, like when they got to the last path and the boss was on that first bend. Now that Tier 4 was taken care of, all that was left to do was to move on to Tier 5. Right before the boss event, I figured out a cool little trick to keep the Overclock Engineer away from the track. If you use middle path ice monkeys to make ice platforms, you can just barely position the engineer monkey to the point where it can only see a tiny sliver of the track at the very end. This is really nice because it means we won't have to micro the engineer's position and we'll have full uptime on our Ultra Boost. After grabbing a quick Rejuve potion from Geraldo, it was finally time to take on the last tier of boss. The Megalodon was doing good damage to the boss, but the normal balloons were causing us a lot of problems. The Moabs are as strong and fast as they've ever been, and every time the boss reaches 1% of its health, it releases a bunch of DDTs. The Megalodon can deal with these DDTs usually, but there's a few spots where the boss is too far away from the last bend that some of the DDTs are able to sneak through, and since they're so fast, they're very hard to react to. But through trial and error, I'm able to figure out how to pop every single balloon. Even though we weren't able to win that attempt, I still had one more idea. Whenever Homeland Defense was on cooldown, I used a normal Call to Arms village to compensate. But the Call to Arms village only gives a 50% attack speed bonus as opposed to the Homeland Defense's 100% attack speed bonus. So to get the Homeland Defense's 100% attack speed buff at all times, I placed a bunch of 4th tier Call to Arm villages. That way, whenever the Homeland Defense goes on cooldown, we can sell it and rebuy it with one of the 4th tier villages we've placed. The Homeland Defense ability will be off cooldown, and whenever it goes on cooldown again, we can rinse and repeat the process. Unfortunately, this didn't get us very much further, and we ended up losing with just about 25% HP left on the boss. Was that it? Was the Megalodon really not able to beat Tier 5 Elite Bloonarius? Was the challenge over? Well, not quite. You see, remember how I said that the tower was bugged with attack speed earlier? Well, more specifically, when the Megalodon receives an attack speed buff, the amount it's buffed by is more than it should be. And that might sound crazy, but there's actually a point where the Megalodon reaches its max amount of attack speed buffs and its attack speed can't go any higher. So if we want to give our Megalodon any more damage, we have to hope that it hasn't reached its maximum attack speed with our current buffs. And sure enough, when I went and tested this in sandbox mode, the Megalodon wasn't at its maximum attack speed. And even better, when I gave it another attack speed buff, its attack speed doubled. But we still had another problem to worry about. There were only a few attack speed buffs left that we could give to the Megalodon. One of them, the Sun Temple's support sacrifice buff, wasn't going to work out because of how much range the Sun Temple would have. It would surely steal pops. But the other one is something you probably wouldn't think of. Ezili's Sacrificial Totem. Normally the Totem Sacrifice would only give about 17% attack speed, but because of how the Megalodon is bugged, it will also give double attack speed from what we already had. And when Ezili is at level 16, the Totem has almost maximum uptime when buffed with an Energizer sub. But if we wanted to use Ezili, we would have to start over the boss event from the very beginning, so that's exactly what I did. Getting back to the Tier 5 boss event wasn't actually that hard with Ezili. Since I learned last attempt that I didn't need to farm that hard to win, I took it easy and spent a lot more on defense than I did the first time, which made up for not having Geraldo's items. A couple differences though were the fact that I had to put the Beast Handler in a different spot so that it would be in range of Ezili's totem, and also the fact that I had to use Submerge and Support Submarines whenever there were rounds with Camo Balloons. After doing the first 4 tiers all over again, we finally made it back to round 120. Would the new hero be able to push our Beast Handler over the edge and finally beat Tier 5? Well, all we had left to do was press play and find out. Once Bloonarius made it this far on the track, I knew that we would win no matter what. So I gave my support monkeys one last check for pops and then sold them off to make sure they wouldn't get pops for the rest of the game. Sure, the Megalodon would be weaker from the lack of buffs, but this was the home stretch. All we had to do was sit back and watch. And with one final big thrash, the Megalodon took down the Tier 5 Elite Bloonarius, making it officially the first tower to ever do the All Pops boss event that isn't a Paragon. Thank you for watching.